An information revolution is sweeping through the Middle East. No longer can state media organizations feed their audiences propaganda with any confidence it'll be swallowed. But that doesn't mean they've stopped trying. My guest is a journalist who knows what it means to serve an authoritarian regime. Abdel Latif El-Menawy was the chief of news at Egypt's state broadcaster before and during the revolution which toppled Mubarak. Is the Arab world ready for a truly free media? Abdel Latif El-Menawy, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
You've had plenty of time now to reflect on those momentous days of revolution back in early 2011. Do you have any sense of shame about your role in what happened?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What I've done my professional job on the maximum professionalism I can at the time. I did a role of saving the country and to minimize the damage as much as I can. And in the circumstances I was in, I managed to stop or prevent any sort of conflict or clashes between the army and the presidential palace when I decided to take the decision to announce the statement number 1 for the army. Without going back to anybody.
Right, well, you're racing ahead through some of the detail of what happened during those 18 days, and we will unpick it. But
no.
Well, shame
no.
I started with, and I'll tell you why, because I just wonder whether you've pondered the words of a number of your own staff, people who were employed by Egypt Radio and Television, who have, in their different ways, condemned the operation that you were leading. For example, Shahira Amin, who spent years working at state TV in one form or another, she said during the 18 days of revolution, state television waged an information war against democracy activists. It tried to smear and delegitimize the revolution.
I'm afraid some of these stands from some people, it was just a private matter regarding them. I mean, I don't want to go through the names, but nobody resigned at that time as they announced. Nobody.
But she resigned shortly afterwards. And you know, many state television journalists actually refused to show up during some of those days and actually went to join the demonstrations.
No one resigned at that time. No one resigned at the time. I will tell you the situation as...
But that doesn't mean she's not wrong. I mean, just address, if you would, the words that she used. She says that there were people running Egypt state television at the time who tried to delegitimize the protesters and smear the revolution.
We did our job at that time as professionals under pressure. I was a professional at that time, and I had 3 choices to take one of them. Either to do as any state TV doing, to be a PR tool for the regime, and no one will blame me at the time. We are employees for the government, and no one will say a word about that. This is the choice number 1. Choice number 2 is just to leave the place. Choice number 3 is to take the responsibility as you understand it, and you do your job as you understand and as you can under the pressure we had at that time.
Now, you keep talking about the pressure. Let's just talk about that. You did you not receive calls from the presidential palace, for example, saying that you must keep the voices of protesters off air?
There is 2 stages in the coverage for the Egyptian
but
TV
if you would,
at
just answer the question. You did receive those calls, didn't you?
It's under this line. I mean, the first period, it's starting from 25th until 2nd of February. And the time I was in the middle of the body with crisis. I mean, part of the body, it's the state itself. The parts of the body, they are fighting against each other. And each one of them trying to control the media at that time.
Well, with respect, it wasn't really, you make it sound like a civil war. It wasn't like that at all. I mean, there were people who wanted to go on the streets to make plain their desire to see a new Egypt, to see the Mubarak regime ended, to see democracy in the country.
I'm not talking about the demonstrators. I'm talking about the state itself. I'm talking about the government. I'm talking about the presidential palace at a hand, and the army and the intelligence on the other hand.
Yes, but I'm not asking you to go into the ins and outs of what was happening inside the politics of the palace. I'm simply asking you why, for example, Egypt State Television News, which you were the director of, the chief of, why they did not show the scenes in Tahrir Square day after day, starting on the 25th of January. Why you did not air the views of the pro-democracy protesters, why you kept them off air, and why the television repeatedly talked about the criminality, the thuggish violence that was being undertaken, according to your state television, by the protesters, when in fact most of what was reported simply wasn't true.
I'm afraid also it's not accurate information. We didn't call the demonstrators in the street as thugs at all. At the first few days, since 25th to 2nd of February, we opened the phone line for a lot of people, but I had instructions at the time not to open the telephone line or to have guests from Tahrir Square. What I did at the time, I did two simple things. First, I stopped anyone of people the people don't like them, and they are very loyal to the regime. And I asked people who are already have a sort of respect from the people to talk. And the other thing, I was playing like a cat and rat at the time. I let few opinions to go on air without telling, and I just switch my phone off, not to answer the presidential palace, not to answer the minister himself, just to have this sort of balance. The other thing is, our cameras was destroyed when it went to the square at that time, at the first few days. The third or fourth thing is, we are under siege of the army and the demonstrators at the time. We cannot go out with our camera without permission from the army, who controlled the building since 28th of January at 6 p.m.
Right, but it's more than just a question of discussing the difficulties of the situation in terms of logistics. I mean, you were an employee of the government. You were answerable to the information minister who sat in the very same building that you did. Those were the terms and conditions upon which you'd agreed to take the job. You were a tool of the Mubarak regime, were you not?
Is it a judgment or a question?
It's a question.
Right.
Were you not a tool of the Mubarak regime?
I was not a tool of Mubarak regime. I was a professional who accepted at a certain time to work within the state TV, which I had a dream at that time to be a professional, a real public TV, a taxpayer TV, at 2005.
Were you a member of the ruling National Democratic Party?
I was a member of NDP, but there is few points regarding the NDP. The NDP is not a Ba'ath party like Iraqi one. NDP, you cannot consider it as a sort of it's not like Ba'ath.
If you wanted to be this independent, fair-minded, entirely accountable journalist running Egyptian television, why did you feel it was appropriate to be a member of Mubarak's ruling party?
Because I will tell you that it was not a party, it is a part of the state itself. Half of the people at Tahrir Square, excuse me,
I do think that many Egyptians listening to this might have a quarrel with that statement.
Half of the people of Tahrir Square were members of the party. Sam Sharaf, the prime minister from the Tahrir Square, was a member of NDP. Amr Hamzawi, the MP now in the parliament, he was a member of MP. A lot of people was a member of NDP. NDP is a part of the regime, and if you can go through 1,000 years ago, it's like Egypt is a central society, and the power is central, and it's just like that. A lot of people, they are dealing with the regime as part. They hate it and love it at the same time. So this is the kind of the right question is, when you were a member of NDP, did you take any direction from the NDP? Did you follow any of their remarks or what they asked for to do where you were in NDP. This is what I can confirm. Not a single time. I had fights with NDP because my situation, my position, and my decisions, which was against the NDP at the time, during the 5 years I worked on television.
Mr. El-Menawy, you know as well as I do that there are many people now who want a real investigation of exactly what happened inside state media during those days of revolution. There have been efforts by some people who lost family members in the violence to have you testify in a court. There are allegations that, for example, staff members answerable to you actually undertook fake telephone calls pretending to be members of the public who were seeing violent acts by protesters happening outside their windows. It's never been tested in a court of law. Are you prepared?
It has been tested.
Are you prepared to testify?
I'm prepared, of course, but again, what you are saying now has been tested in the court, and they confirmed that what the allegation had been put, that there is a fake phone calls, and they said one of the names, this is Tamer from Shobra, or I don't know from where, and they made a test, a voice test, and they confirmed that this is not true. And this guy already made allegation against who said that against him.
But just clear this up. You haven't testified, have you?
You can consider my book as a...
Well, no, it's rather different going into a court of law under oath and testifying to the truth.
Nobody asked me to do that. Nobody asked me to do that. Because, again, what you are talking about is part of something we are really proud of. Because at the time, when we had these phone calls, nobody, the state itself, there is no power, and we have just the army in the street, and these few offices in the TV to take calls from people who are already suffering from attacking at that time. Nobody.
A final thought about these days of revolution. Of course, in the end, Mubarak was toppled. The army, in essence, shoved him aside. As you said earlier in this interview, you took the decision to air the army's emergency statements from the very beginning without consulting with the presidential palace. You say that was a sign of your realization that the Mubarak era was over. You realized, you say, earlier than many.
It's not like that. No. Not because I realized that Mubarak is finished, so this is the time to finish the job. No. No, it's because I knew from the beginning that Mubarak should take hard decisions, and he did not take it. And this is why I was convinced that he should take the right decision, and any kind of pressure of the president at the time and his team should be taken. And I took this action from the army as sort of act to pressure Mubarak to take the right decision. And this is why I took this decision. It's not because Mubarak is going away, so I didn't play it like that. It was like
I want to straighten out one final thing before we move on. After all of this had happened, Mubarak had gone, you suffered the humiliation of having your own staff, some of your own staff, try to attack you. You were only saved because there were soldiers around you at the time inside the state radio and television building. I just wonder how that felt to you and what sort of message it sent to
you. Let me also put this in right position. This happened on, I think, 13th or 14th of February.
That's right. Just a couple of days after.
I resigned on the 2nd of April, after 6 weeks, okay? What happened is, this is what's going on in Egypt until now. There's a lot of demonstration. I had a phone call before the recording from one of my colleagues on TV now, and there's a demonstration already. They are asking for raising, for salaries and all these things. When you are talking about 20 to 30 people who already from out of 3,000, over 3,000 people were working with me. When you are talking about 25 people asking for private things and cover it with a political slogan, it's not considered as this is the opinion of my staff, because I had my people, my staff who worked with me, because they believed in what I told them. We are working for the nation, not for a person, not for a regime.
Right.
And we're trying to minimize the damage for the country. This is what we have been trying to do.
Let me pick up on that point then, because let's broaden the conversation beyond the days of revolution and your role in them. You say you were working for the nation, and you've made it plain to me that you regard yourself as an independent journalist trying to uphold journalistic standards in a very difficult situation. Let's just consider the sorts of compromises you had to make throughout your time working for state television and radio. For example, you acknowledged that the 2005 election was a sham, and yet you still agreed to work for the government inside state television. I just wonder why you did that.
The presidential election at 2005, this is the first election. The second election was the parliamentary election. The first election, we were the best coverage for presidential election. We were the most balanced at that time, and this is not what we said.
My point isn't that. My point is that you, in the book, say that, frankly, the democracy that the Mubarak regime allowed was, and it's your word, not mine, a sham, and yet that very same year, 2005, you took the decision to leave the journalism you were doing and join state television. I just wonder why.
This is 2010, the parliamentary election.
No, 2005. Are you saying the 2005 election was fair? It was truly democratic?
The first part of the election, 2005, it was fair.
Oh, come on, Mr. El-Menawy, you can't be serious.
When Muslim Brotherhood took, no, this is where you can check it with Muslim Brotherhood themselves, with the opposition. This is the first stage. There are 3 stages in 2005. First stage, it was fair. Second and third one was disaster, and I was the one, as a presenter at that time, even in Egyptian television, who said there is a mistakes, big mistakes, huge mistakes in that.
You seem to be, if I may say so, rewriting history. In the book you've written about your relationship with the Mubarak regime, you talk about the growing hubris, the arrogance and the reliance on the police state apparatus of the Mubarak regime. This is the regime that you decided to work for inside state television. You also talk about how, for example, you were given high-profile interviews like Gamal Mubarak in 2006. He demanded to go over all of the questions with you before you actually recorded the interview. You also say in 2009 you interviewed Hosni Mubarak in Aswan. You say that you respected Mubarak very much and he respected you. This is the entire tenor of your relationship with the Mubarak regime.
I didn't say... Mubarak regime is not the enemy's regime. Mubarak regime was the regime who ruled Egypt for 30 years. And most of people in Egypt were dealing with Mubarak regime, even the opposition, and I saw that with my eyes. They were just looking for a minute to have this blessing from Mubarak regime, and let's be fair. Let me tell you.
Let's be fair. Let's be very fair. Let's be as fair as we can be. Let's be fair to the people of Egypt today who have looked at what has happened to their country in the last 30 years, and they see corruption, they see exploitation, they see a widening gap between the elite rich and the poor. They see now the Mubaraks in the dock, in a court. They see many senior officials convicted of corruption. They even see your old boss, Anas al-Feki, sentenced to 7 years in jail for misappropriation of public funds while in state television. Not a single breath of this was reported by you and your news teams for the 5 years you were in charge.
During the 5 years, we reported more than that. The corruption, we talked about corruption. Excuse me. We talked about corruption. We can go to the recording we have already. When I had this position in Egyptian TV, I had it because I was trying to have this kind of public TV, the freedom of expression. And I had most of the program on air, live to air. It was not recorded. And we can go through all what I've done.
Are you telling me you went after Gamal Mubarak? You went after Hosni Mubarak. You went after the facts, which we now know include the fact that hundreds of millions of US dollars are in Swiss bank accounts.
This facts we are talking about, it has been discovered just after the uprising, after Mubarak just gone at 11th February. It wasn't that time.
Did you do any investigative journalism?
No, we don't have that in our Egyptian TV, unfortunately, and this was something I was trying to do with someone like Yusri Foda, who has already signed a contract with us in January 2011 to work for Nile News at that time and to train journalists for investigation reporting. And this is what we were trying to do at that time, to improve the quality of the journalism at that time. In the book you are mentioning, at 2007, I had a thought many times to just resign and go away at 2007 when I discovered that the wind of change, which I entered this regime and I entered this part of the regime to work on this wind of change, it wasn't a true thing at that time. And I thought at that time really to resign.
Do you wish you had?
To tell you the truth, maybe yes. Maybe yes.
But you didn't.
Because
you didn't.
I didn't. Why I didn't? No. Why I didn't? No, don't just put it, hang it like that.
We're running short of time, and there's so many important things I need to talk to you about before we finish. So let's leave that thought hanging. We can come back to it at the very end.
Please, I didn't because it's either to do whatever you can do, teaching within your little circle. You can, because if I leave it, I will leave it for someone else, and it will be more disaster than it is. I was trying, and
so
the Egyptian people can just notice the improvement happened to the news and the political program in Egyptian TV, comparing between January 2005 and when I left at January, or until January 2011.
Well, that's an interesting point you make, because I want to bring us up to date now, and just briefly, if I may, consider where Egypt is today. Of course, Egypt's still, for the time being, controlled ultimately by the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces. In the last year, we have seen many dissident bloggers and journalists arrested, detained, put into military detention. We have seen thousands of other people go the same way through the military court system. We've seen freedom of expression and freedom of media time and again stamped upon by the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces. So where is Egypt's revolution today when it comes to freedom of expression?
Regarding the freedom of expression, I believe that Egypt is passing through a very difficult time because the misusing of the freedom of expression pushing the country for a disaster. What's going on in Egypt now during this discussion, we are just trying to make sort of denial, attacking. Nobody is thinking about the future. Nobody is challenging even the SCAF for what they are doing, if they are doing something right or wrong. This is the problem. The freedom of discussion now is there's no even ceiling for now. You are talking about the bloggers who are already in jail. I don't think that anybody of them in jail now. Nobody in jail now. All of them
most
are
of them have been released,
free,
but let's not forget that many of them have suffered weeks and months inside military prison.
I'm completely against any decision to be taken against the freedom of expression. And this is my opinion all the time. And this is what I have said. I've told my friends, either in political parties, in the SCAF, in the intelligence. My opinion is to deal with people in very transparency. You have to talk. You have to know how to deal with them. The problem with the SCAF, with the army, that they came for a situation they are not ready for it. They don't know how to run a country.
Isn't it just a wider question than that? And we can look across the Middle East, consider what Bashar al-Assad and his regime are doing today, that too many people in power in the Arab world still don't get it. They don't get the fact that the information control they used to exercise is no longer tenable, given social networks, Facebook, Twitter, given satellite television, internet television. It is not possible for them to control information the way they used to, but they don't realize it.
I don't think there is any trial now to control the media. I came back just last night from Egypt, and I saw the TV channel, the newspapers. There is no even ceiling for the expression.
Why did the SCAF shut down Al Jazeera in Arabic then?
There is also Al Jazeera is a long story, but I'll talk about this part.
Well, we haven't got time for a long story.
Yeah,
it
I know.
Seems to me, I want to tap your insight across the Arab world. I've asked the question at the very beginning, is the Arab world really ready for a free media?
I think that we have a real problem. There is two medias, the private media and the state media. Regarding the private media, I believe that we have a lack of having this code of ethics, which should be done by the media people themselves, and we should have this sort of social, not supervising but observing the media, like the Ofcom here in United Kingdom.
I know you have plans to set up a pan-Arabic media operation. Do you think you have the personal credibility to draw people in?
I think we should try. Yes, we have. I have. I think we will be able to do that. It's a sort of a challenge, and we should accept. I'm a person who accepts challenges, and I accept this challenge, and I hope that we will be able to do that.
Abdel Latif El-Menawy, we have to end there. Thanks for being on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.